Hi, everybody. This is Carol Maloney Scott. I am here today with Suzanne Daniels, and thank you for being here, Suzanne. I appreciate it. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a little information about Suzanne so you know who she is and why I asked her to talk with us today. So Suzanne is a lawyer from South Africa with a very interesting story that she's going to share with us in a little while as far as her reinventing of herself and her career. She admits that she's 50, which is cool. So I'll admit that I'm 51. I'm older. Suzanne says that she's 50 and transitioning from a 25-year career in law and compliance to being a life coach for women in business. I am recovering from a traumatic experience as a whistleblower. It has taken me about 3 years to find my equilibrium and process what has happened to me. The best thing I ever did was hire a business coach. Now I coach startups because I love the passion and drive of the new entrepreneur. I'm looking to coach and mentor more women to do the same in 2020. So that's what Suzanne is doing. So Suzanne's previous life as a lawyer and compliance professional, in talking with her, realized that she did a lot of interviewing and hiring in that world, in that life, which wasn't so long ago. So I wanted to talk a little bit with Suzanne today about that process, and also then talk a little bit about how she's reinvented herself and how inspirational that is for all of us. So Suzanne, how did you feel about interviewing in your corporate career and why? And when we talked about this, I laughed. So tell us how you felt about that.
Carol, to be very honest, I was terrified of the recruitment process and the interviewing process. As head of legal and compliance, I could go to court anytime, but having to deal with interviewing people was just like, oh no, how do I do this?
So was it stressful?
Because for me,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
For me, it was very important that you get the right person onto the job, and I had a staff of 30 odd people, 30 odd lawyers. So you can imagine managing legal professionals or any professional is very different from managing ordinary workers. So the chemistry had to be right and all of those. So it made it very terrifying for me.
I would think there was probably a lot of egos in that room. There was that many lawyers.
Oh, yes.
A lot of big egos, right? A lot of people feeling they're super important. So, so when you did those interviews, were you working with those other people on were you doing panel interviews where you needed to work as a team to do the interviewing?
Yes, there was in the company that I was with, it was usually panel interviews. And I would get my most senior lawyers to sit with me. But at the end of the day, it was my sign-off that they required.
Okay.
So generally, the HR professional would want me to sit in on those interviews. I couldn't let my seniors do it without me.
Okay.
And I think that's what made it terrifying for me.
Okay. And was it terrifying because of the responsibility of you had to make the choice and you hoped it was a good one, or was it just frustrating because the candidates weren't very well prepared and it was hard to find the right people?
I think it was a mix of both, of a variety of factors. I think what frustrated me is that the interviewees and the candidates didn't realize that they actually could ask me questions as well. I always had to school them and say, you know what, you actually interviewing, you should interview me as well. Because I would ask, do you have any questions for me? And then they'd look at me and I'd say, but you really have to, because an employment relationship is two ways. You know? So it was, in that way, it was a bit scary for me. And then the other issue was that with panel interviews, we had standard questions, and not everybody fitted into that mold. And I was just always wanting to. Sometimes there was a candidate that intrigued me, and I wanted to dig more. And the HR professional would say, "No, you can't, because you have to ask the same questions." You know,
Okay,
so
okay. Ask
it's
every
sort of
candidate two
limited
questions,
to know the people.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that can be very frustrating. But yeah, I think you make a really good point, that it's a two-way street, because I think a lot of people look at the interview as, I'm going to be asked questions, and all they think about, even if they're well prepared for the interview, all they think about is, what questions might I be asked and how am I going to answer them? And obviously that is important, right? I mean, that's an important piece of the puzzle, but it's also very important to think about, what do I want to know? Because I need to make a good decision. Because I know when I was a recruiter, people would get so focused on, I need a job, I need a job, I need a job, that they would forget that if they get the offer and they take the job, that now they have to do the job. They have to want to do the job. And if they don't like the job, guess what? They're going to be back in that yucky interviewing process that they don't like again. They're going to be doing it all over again far sooner, right, than they want to. And in your case, if you don't make a good hire, you're going to be, again, looking for a person too soon. So, yeah, we talked a little bit about, the qualities that you look for, and one of them was, that interpersonal skills, as opposed to just worrying about their technical skills. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, for me it was more. For me, it was definitely more about. I mean, I think everybody has the academic qualifications. So if you have a degree, you at least have a baseline. For me, it was more important to see how people interact. Are they able to articulate what they want? Actually, can they interact with me? Because in the corporate world, I was quite intimidating in my suit and all of those things. And so I also wanted to know if people would be able to see beyond the uniform and actually interact as a person, because that's what I was,
Right.
I mean, I had to be quite demanding and things like that, but that was because of the pressures of the job. But
Right.
I tried not to lose sight of the fact that we were working with people who had families and, other things other than the job.
Right.
And so that was very like a tug of war, getting people to open up about things. And I think for me, more my qualities, which was in contradiction to my my other panelists who sat with me, was that I would focus more on how they came across and whether they would be able to survive in the corporate jungle.
Right. So you were looking for that cultural fit, and, are they going to fit in this environment? Not can they do the work, but because you felt like they were already screened well enough that they were people who could do the work, and you weren't really looking for them to prove that as much as you were that they were a good cultural fit for the environment, and also that they could, interact with people, because as you said, even though you're wearing a suit and you look intimidating and you're the one in charge and all that, you're still a person. And at the end of the day, people hire people, right? It's still a people process, where, yes, you have to be able to prove that you can do the job, but you really need to be able to prove that you're a person that is going to fit in this organization, right? And that it's somebody that you want to see every day. It's somebody that's going to be a good team player, somebody who's going to get along with people, right? Not cause a lot of grief and strife, right? So one thing I'm interested in too is now, you live in South Africa, and I know we talked about how you spend a lot of time in the U.S. In Los Angeles, because I guess you said your daughter's going to school there. So obviously you spend a lot of time in the U.S. as well, but so South Africa is a very far away place, and it's probably a place that a lot of people that are going to be listening to this interview have no knowledge of, really, have a very limited knowledge about how things are there. So I guess one of the questions I thought was interesting was just, do you feel that there are any cultural differences between interviewing in South Africa or other countries that you've lived or worked in and the U.S.? And, you said that you really didn't think so. So I'm wondering, do you really think that the interviewing principles are really, go across all cultures, that they're really very similar in different cultures?
I think so. I've had the opportunity to work in the UK and in
Mhm.
Germany in my early career, and then also interacted with a lot of US lawyers. So I
Okay.
think the culture of hiring and interviewing is the same.
Hmm.
Obviously, there are different things. I mean, our labor laws are a little bit different.
Right, right.
Um, we had paternity leave for a long time and paid maternity leave for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, so those kinds of there are those little nuances from the legalities and those things,
Right.
but I think it's fairly easy for like someone like me to walk into a US environment and actually cope,
Okay.
because the work ethic is the same.
Okay.
So um, the interviewing process, I don't think is any different. I've actually had interviews in the US
Okay.
in my earlier life, and they were pretty much the same as what I had experienced in South Africa.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's just interesting because I do have a pretty international audience, and I just think it's interesting for people to be able to see, that a lot of this stuff is not just US based, because I'm in the US, that it's very transferable to other cultures. One thing I'm very curious about that I didn't ask you when we were on the phone doing our little meet and greet call before we did this was, are career coaches common in your country? If I went to South Africa, which I'm probably not going to do, but if I went to South Africa and said, hi, I'm a career coach, would people know what that means? Is that something that people seek out in your country or in other countries in your experience?
To be honest, when you sent me the questions, I was actually quite intrigued with that one. Career coaching is not sort of a standalone thing in South Africa just yet. The coaching industry in South Africa is growing,
Okay.
um, but I don't think people, and I think people need to. It will certainly be something that I would encourage people to do,
Mm-hmm.
um, because they really need to be prepared, and there's a lot more planning that goes into a career. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
looking back on mine now, I
Right.
would thought they would have, if I had planned it a little bit better, I might not have made the choices that I did, and if I
Right.
had a sounding board.
Mm-hmm.
Because for us, career guidance is not that sophisticated in schools.
Right. It's not
So a
here
career
either.
coach would,
It's not here. It's not. Yeah.
so a career coach would actually be a great asset. That's somebody
Mhm.
that knows the environment, the recruiting, the planning of a career. I think
Right.
if kids out of high school, before they even go to university, could have that, it would actually make their life a lot less stressful.
Right. It's very much offered, in the US. I mean, but in high schools, it's really, more of, they call it a guidance counselor, and that's usually someone that helps you figure out what classes you should take and maybe, helps you to apply to colleges and things like that. And then when you're in college in the US, yes, every college has a career center. But I can tell you just from my own experience and the experience of my son and my stepdaughter and, all their friends and other kids and stuff that I've talked to and just other professionals in my field, most college students do not avail themselves of those services. They just don't do it, so it's not something that's in the forefront of everyone's mind. And like you said, when you become our age, and you look back and you think of all the choices that you made, or all the things that maybe you didn't make a choice and a choice was almost made for you, things just fell in your lap, you just, whatever, you just kind of went, I drew a little picture one time and I posted it somewhere on Facebook or something of, like, like if your career path, I want people to make the career happiness map, so the map is, we go from here to here and here and here. And isn't that nice? Well, mine was like this. Mine was like a big mess with no planning, no nothing, so I really took that, my own life experience of that big mess and really looked at it and said, okay, but really, how did I get from here to here, and how can I help other people to figure out how to do that in a shorter period of time with less stress, more ease, more happiness, and yeah, get to be our age and not feel like, everything is just crazy. However, that leads me into the last question that I want to ask you. So as a life coach now, which is super cool that you're doing that and that you've reinvented yourself, in later career, what advice would you give women who are struggling with the fact that, like you and I, they didn't make the best choices necessarily, they didn't have the best guidance, and now they find themselves in a career where they're not happy, but they feel like it's too late to make a change, they don't know what to do. So what advice would you give those women?
I must say, the first thing, it might sound like a cliche, but it's never too late to make a change. I think in my case, I was, I'll use myself as an example. I was quite devastated that I actually didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, because I had wanted to be a lawyer since I was 4 years old.
Wow.
So my life was like, I'm studying law, that's what I did. I went to university. 6 years into my career, I hated it.
Wow.
So, but I continued. I
Yeah.
found the corporate law much more my style, and I did that. But then after the whistleblowing experience, the way that the company treated me, the legal battles I had to go through, I just thought law is not conducive to actually getting to a solution. It is such an aggressive environment, and there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser, and that actually devastated me to realize that after all this time, that I actually didn't want to work in that environment. But what I did then is I sat down and I looked at what skills could I transfer. That's why I work with women in business right now, because I have that skill. I know how businesses operate. I know how to set them up. I know how to close them down, manage them in between. So I've been through the full cycle of a business setting, both in the corporate world and in my own businesses, because I've worked for consulting firms and those kinds of things where I was partner, and even in law firms. So I've had that experience. So you must never think that, even as haphazard as it may have been, every job opportunity, every opportunity that you've had to work actually has given you a unique skill set. And I think, women at our age mustn't think that life is over. I think for me, when my daughter moved to LA, I was like, oh my goodness, I've worked myself out of a job. And as the mom job was gone.
Yeah, the mom job. And, I know, I'm in that boat.
Yep. So it was just sitting down and really thinking, how can I use all of the skills and experience? Because I'm quite an experienced woman if I look at where other women are placed, So I have had opportunities that I need to then work backwards and see, what can I do? What can I give back? And for me, it was deciding. I did actually go and see a coach. I had 2 coaches, in fact. I looked at I had a mindset coach. Because I did have to deal with the devastation of sort of losing this high-flying career, and then having to reinvent myself. So I worked with a mindset coach. I also realized that the world of work had changed substantially.
Yeah.
So I learned some skills about digital online, running a business online. Right. So I did a 3-month, quite intensive program. So I think if you just, calm down, look at it, you actually realize that you still have a lot to offer. And it's just finding where you would fit in, because like you, Carol, you use your experience now and it's well received. I went through a period where I only looked at the business side of the coaching, and I soon realized that women actually were grappling with more the the softer skills, you know, how to be the boss, how to discipline people in the workplace, performance reviews, those kinds of things, or just the overwhelm of setting up a business. So it was a whole gamut of things. So I decided to merge the life coaching and the business coaching into one sort of one paradigm.
Right. Right.
And it's quite
Stuff
enjoyable.
is huge. The mindset stuff is huge. And I think in, within career coaching as well, we work on the mindset stuff, because I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like that, it's all about the confidence, and the confidence and the courage and, and just, like you said, just calm down. Just, go through the steps and figure it out. And, but the first step really is to just, to get that confidence up. And it's very hard to do that on your own. It is very hard to do that on your own, because society tells us a lot of times that, we're old, and that, youth is valuable, and that, you hear people saying things like, oh, no one will ever hire me, whatever age, or, no one will, they just want young people, or, and it's like, is there a grain of truth sometimes? Maybe, but who cares? Like, you can still figure out where your place is. Your place is still out there waiting for you. And as you said, at our age, and certainly older. I mean, I spoke with one of my friends the other day, and we did an interview, Leanne Pond. She's 62, I think she said, and she just published her first book and started her business last year and left her corporate career. So, I mean, it really is never too late. I always say, if your mind and your body are sound, and you're physically and mentally capable, then it's not too late, to do something else with your life. So yeah, that's good insight.
Because I also think, in my case, for being at home and just being mom was great for a while. And then once I realized, oh, she doesn't actually need me anymore.
Right. Right.
It was like, okay, what am I going to do with myself now? So the
Right.
initial things I could do with myself, but it really does help to get a coach or two into your space. And
Right.
actually just, to have that sounding board. It's not always good to talk to your friends or family members, because they all feel the same.
Oh, no.
I'll do this.
No.
And they're so used to seeing you in one box.
Yeah, I find they're the worst people to talk to sometimes. Well, because they have a lot of bias that, it has nothing to do with you. Again, because they've been programmed by their upbringing and their experiences and you really need that impartial person. Well, I'm going to put Suzanne's information in the post when I post this video. So when you're seeing it, her information will be there, so you can check her out and all the things she's doing. Certainly if you're somebody who, I'm primarily working with women who are looking to find a job, another job, but certainly those who are really looking for that business coaching, and, the mindset around that, certainly check out Suzanne's stuff. And I appreciate you being here so much today. I know it's with the time difference, we got a little confused, but now we're good. And we did it. You're not as far away as I thought you were, and I'm not as confused as I was, so that's good. So I'm going to post this, and hopefully, some of my people will reach out to you, and some of your people will reach out to me, and, we'll go from there. But thank you so much for being here, and you have a wonderful day, Suzanne, and we will be back soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.